Welcome to today's my installment of my story. I do want to invite you to sit down with a good cup of tea or coffee or hot cocoa, and what resonates for you is truth. Great. What doesn't? That's perfectly exactly how it should be. We are all unique. This is my story. My story, my path, my current moment right now, with the abilities and the experience that have led to the unlocking of the awareness of all of this stuff, some of which is very new to me and I'm still exploring and strengthening and unlocking and adjusting to. And in retrospect, looking back at moments in my life as someone who identifies with the concept of being empathic, but also psychic, I'm able to know that there's information coming to me from many different aspects, but I'm able to know that I have boundaries, that I can defend myself, that I'm not alone, that I do have a spirit team that has been doing everything they can to be, here for me, to help me understand these things, even though I'm incredibly stubborn. And that stubbornness is a commitment to my authenticity. If I don't understand it, if I'm not able to be present with it, then I can't own it. I would just be blindly following, and that detracts from its ability to be powerful. I respect where each and every one of you are on your path. I don't want to intervene. I don't want to give you the answers, because that would too intervene with your ability to authentically own the learning of that lesson, to making it your own. On a personal level, my goal is to help you hear yourself, and in some of what I share, to know that you're not alone. That there really are other people out there experiencing these things. And they're overcoming them. They're working with them. They're finding their way through the challenge to the other side. That there's hope. On a spiritual level, we are all connected. We're all connected. If there is anything in this, my story, that resonates for you, it's because the all that is, the divine, as I personally relate to, and what that word means to me when I use it. Someone else's definition in relationship to divine, that word, is not going to be the same as mine. And that's really the theme of this, my story. So I honor your uniqueness, and I honor your path. And this is here because you're heard. Your pain is heard. Your desire to not feel so alone, to have your light reinforced with another light, is here. That you're loved, that you're valued, that you're not forgotten. That consciousness that is aware of all of our consciousness recognizes your SOS. Your I need help. I need help. I need a little validation, a little pick me up, a little sign, a little, you're not alone in the dark. The light is aware you're there. The light is coming with, I'm getting like reinforcement or a boost for you. So bringing it down into the personal, it allows that part of us to be more open to really figuring out how to relate to the spiritual side of it, where we can own. And I hope that my story inspires you. I hope that you are able to ask questions from a different perspective that you can ask yourself and reflect on to connect dots within you, because nobody knows you better than you, other than, the source, divine. It's almost like every moment, every thought, every action or intention or action almost taken but not taken, all of that, when the divine focuses fully on you, it's all there. It's all there. So my journey with the relationship with divine has currently brought me to a moment where I don't put the divine in a box. I don't put this consciousness into a limited space. I don't want to say ever to a being that's created so much that we don't even understand, and we're still baffled by when we observe, that you only get to operate within these structured limitations. Now, I do not want this to be interpreted as a disrespect for these structures, because these structures were created out of love for us, because we are trying to relate to that, and it's so challenging to do because it's limitless. Most of what we experience in our physical reality is like, there's certain laws of existence, like gravity is a thing. You can't get away from gravity. Good luck outrunning that black hole. Good luck with that. You drop that apple, it's going to fall. That kind of a thing. So we're raised, our minds are raised with, there are certain constants that are immovable. They're not negotiable. They're a fact. You can tell yourself that gravity doesn't exist all you want, but it's still going to exist here. So when you experience divine intervention, if you will, so that's anytime there's a synchronicity. The first time I became aware of a synchronicity, I was learning about shamanism and what animals mean. There was a book I was exposed to called Animal Speak. Brilliant book. But it was beyond that. There was, like the deck of cards that I had for power animals. There was angels. There was numbers. There was crystals. There was drumming circles. There was meditation, mantras. The more knowledge that I had, the more that the divine was able to reach me. If I knew what 111 meant, then the divine would be, oh, you know what this means. So when you see this number, you know that I'm communicating with you. You know that I'm validating. Or if you see a deer or a cat, or you dream about a horse or a wolf, you know enough about these symbols that you know what I'm trying to communicate with you. So I don't really ascribe to any particular religion. I don't. I don't follow any specific master. I don't. I follow the divine. I follow that consciousness that's present within all of it. And the only word we have in our language that is close enough to it is love. And that's just, it's so much more than a 4-letter word. when I use it this way. So religions, they are structures that are set up to help us relate, to communicate. They are technologies. In some regards, they were definitely used for evil, but in their original inception, they were meant to guide and teach and make the process of getting close to an understanding of this relationship easier, because there was an established education system to it, really. So I don't look at religion and think it's bad or it's evil. It's something that can be used for bad and for evil. Definitely, every single one. But the spirit of it, the heart of it, is still the divine. And it's up for the follower, the student, the acolyte, to choose where they focus. I was raised in the mid-US. I have done some traveling, but not a lot. I live in pretty much the middle of nowhere. So very small communities, very close-minded individuals that don't want you to color outside the lines, and if you do, you don't talk about it. So very oppressive. You were to only be what they expected you to be in order to be accepted. So the message is, don't be your authentic self. People don't really want to know. And you're to do things at about a typical, expected life path. Okay, so graduate high school, go to college, meet your partner in college, get married out of college about age 25, have kids. You end up about, 35, 40, maybe, the empty nest thing, 45, and that's where, you typically end up with a midlife crisis, and you get a divorce, or you already had, and you were living, as two separate parents who then got into a new relationship, and all of you were co-parenting all the kids. Sometimes there's a second career at that point as well. So it was very like, your life is already planned, just deal with it. If you want to belong, if you want to have a social circle, you don't get to be different. You don't get to be unique. You don't get to ask questions, especially the uncomfortable ones, like, why? You don't get to do that. People don't want to look at those things. They don't want to know themselves. And if you're trying to figure out who you are by learning about another perspective, then you're asking them to know about themselves, and they don't want to necessarily do that. And that's partially because of their own experience. The desire to belong to a social community group is very instinctively reinforced because it equaled survival. So you were to conform if you were to survive. We live in a time where that's not necessary. We live in a time where you can marry who you want. You don't have to be in a marriage you don't want for the rest of your life because society demands it of you. You don't have to pretend that you love someone that you don't. Some of us, we still live with this hell, and it's because of many different factors. And we find ourselves trapped and controlled and feeling unable to find our freedom, our liberation from it. And a lot of times that's got a lot to do with not just social connections, but financial and financial links to survival. So for many individuals, and depending on where you are in the world, it's not this, it's very old-fashioned. How do I want to put this? Like third world country, it's not going to be the same as in the States. And really, I can only speak from full experience from the States because it's what I know. I happen to know from, I had some foreign exchange students growing up that they had this perception of what it was to be in the States that was from the movies. And that's not how it is to be in the States. They had a bit of a, oh, well, I was like all ready for this and, huh. So I'm not going to judge another country based upon their movies or their media. I'm not going to judge a whole people as that's what they are. I don't know that. I would know that if I lived there for a time, and then I could say. So I'm not going to speak as though I'm familiar with what it is to be Australian, though I have heard some things, and they sound rather refreshing, to be quite honest. How they don't care about being politically correct and they don't care about your feelings. They're going to make fun of you. They're going to call things out. They're going to, just, it's like, sure, at times it's just not okay. Like, but other times it's about, there's almost a freedom in it. Because then you're not being hung up on things. You're not identifying with something as a negative when it's not. It's just a facet of you. It's not something to be ostracized or separated or to make you feel separate. It's just part of who you are. Oh, I had to shift there. So, this has been my experience, my own unique experience. And it felt very oppressive and very controlling. And my greatest moments of peace were when I was alone. Predominantly when I would be outside. They are clearing some snow, as I believe I said at the beginning. But it snowed here, so you might periodically hear them working out there to move some stuff. So I do apologize for that, but it's just part of life where I live. Trying to find where they want me to they being like all of me wants me to pick up here. That totally distracted me. Well, it really just comes back to I'm not putting the divine into a box. Where there's love, there's the divine, there's truth, that's what it means to me. It's like saying the limitless, but that sounds kind of weird. It sounds like a boogeyman in a sci-fi movie or something, or the void from the never-ending story. The limitless. So the divine to me is okay, so this is probably a really good metaphor. So if you were to Google right now, I'm probably not going to come up with the perfect search words at the top of my head, but there is a picture. There's two pictures. There's a picture of the cosmos, like the background radiation where we can tell at the greatest distance we are from the background radiation, where there's a structure to the interconnection of solar systems and stars and how that looks incredibly similar to like a microscopic examination of what the neurological system looks like at that level in the human brain. And when you put those two next to each other, it's just uncanny, the similarity in appearance. And it begins to make me wonder, right? How does this ever continue? And this is just the two layers we're aware of right now. That maybe the being that we relate to, or the power or consciousness we relate to as the divine, is actually in another layer of reality, one of us, experiencing, and they have their own mind-blowing relationship with a divine being. Another way to put this would be how the solar system, everything rotates around it in circles. The planets, and then the moons rotate around the planets, and they all kind of tug and pull on one another. And we have some, entrapped asteroids and comets that have a, elliptical pattern, but it's always circular in some fashion. They rotate around the sun, and then you have the galaxies that are in a spiral. So it's a rotation, it's a spinning around the center. And at the center of the galaxy is a supermassive black hole. So all of these galaxies rotate around that supermassive black hole in a circular fashion. So that's grander. Now, if you go in the opposite direction, you go into smaller, like atoms and protons and neutrons, they're rotating around the nuclei. I don't want to call it the nucleus, but it might be that. I think there's a different name for it. But my brain is not really helping me with that right now. Either way, the center of it. I think it's nuclei. They're all rotating around that center point in a circular fashion. Sound and vibration. And what really blows my mind is the string theory, because that's not circular. So what is that? Does that lead to the next layer down, where we are at like the slide of the universe versus our neurological brain slide? And then is there another layer of existence in the smaller that looks at our neurological brain as we do the slide of the universe and go, oh my gosh, like each cell in our body is affected by every thought, every feeling, every emotion that we have. There is a scientist that has replicated this. I can't remember the top of my head, but it's, oh my gosh, I'm so, like, I want to say it. I think it's like, something with water. So you hold the water and you label it, or you think like feelings of emotion or love or happiness or joy, and then they flash freeze the water to see what it crystallizes like. And the images, because every snowflake is unique. Well, every image seems to visually, symmetrically represent or be a mirror of the emotion, because the negative thoughts, those crystallize in a fashion that you could just tell is, ugh. Like it's, I'm wanting to have the actual title. It's not the secret language of water, but it might be. Something like that. But when you think about that and how most of our body is water, our thoughts and emotions affect every single cell in our body. So if we're thinking a lot of negative thoughts and we're owning them as our truth, all of our cells are doing it too. And the other side. If we're thinking loving, amazing, beautiful, living in like this state of just such gratitude for being in this moment, that completely shifts the reality of every cell, because most of them are filled with water. So if we, you, me, are like a cell in the divine's experience, then that means that our cells in our bodies are like one of us. And we're the divine to that cell. The thoughts and the emotions we choose to have affect that. The thoughts and the emotions that the divine chooses affect us. So when I relate to my divine as this amazingly loving, beyond my comprehension being that is limitless. And I know that simply because I'm able to be aware of these things, it's because the divine wants me to be able to help consistently choose love. It's a domino effect. The more cells within our body that know that we are consistently choosing positive self-loving thoughts and care and gratitude, the more neural pathways, and you know that there's cells, the more neural pathways that are positively reinforced along that line, the more likely we are to think that way. So when I choose to see this being as a loving being, I'm saying, you know what, I love you back. I love you enough to consistently choose this because I want you to be able to consistently choose this. I see you this way, so I open up the opportunity for you to be this way. And that's me loving the divine back. Now, if I were to say, well, you know, I only love you if, which, I mean, we do that sometimes. Like, we think we're making a deal with God. If you're making a deal, you're making a deal with, for example, I will only do this if you do that. That's not, I'm hearing that's like a deal with the devil. Like, you're not actually making a deal with God. You don't make deals with God. You love God and God loves you back. And God loves you and you love God back. You love the divine and the divine loves you back. It's a never-ending loop. That's the one I would choose. Now, I'm not going to say that it's like at times I'm like, I can't shift from this current experience without some kind of stimuli, some kind of shift, some kind of change in my experience in order to do so. Because this is my current experience. This is what I currently know and have access to. And then along comes a synchronicity, or along comes a book, or a conversation, or a person, a song, a dream, like anything, right? A number. It could be as innocuous as like the price of gas as I drive by, or that the clock at the bank is different than the clock at the grocery store, and I notice that. It could be so many random things, but the divine finds a way. And then opening to receiving downloads. Just wow. They're mind-blowing. And they're so personal. And they're so unique. And they're so humbling. That I can't help but know that there is something to this. When I say like choosing feelings of love and, you know, all of that, you can't maintain that while going through growing pains, while discovering who you are, while freeing yourself from the negative projections of those that don't want the divine to be a loving being, but they want the divine to, either they don't believe in the divine. Could you imagine? That would be like one of your own cells in your body going full on malignant. Not just benign anymore, malignant, actively seeking to harm the cells that are healthy. So when you get to a place where you are like, you know what, I'm going to choose to believe that my divine is a benevolent, loving, caring being. You're taking on a perspective. You're opening up a opportunity to not just be a cell that is possibly, you know, interacting with malignant energy or cells that want you to believe that the divine doesn't exist, you become a cell that's an immune system cell. You become a cell that says, no, I'm not just going to take you being malignant. I'm going to defend that this is my relationship with the divine, that my divine is a benevolent being. I'm not going to just lay here and let you hurt me. I'm going to defend this truth that I'm unwilling to surrender. I'm hoping that this is something that you've been able to intellectually follow along with me on, because I'm pretty sure a fair bit of it was channeling. But it's channeling with knowledge that I have found and encountered in my life. Facts that I found fascinating. Information that connected dots. And another one that is really mind-blowing, which, subsequently, I can't find this, so I'm pretty sure they scrubbed it. You can't locate it now. And if anybody does happen to know where where they have this little snippet of the documentary, that would be great. But they were, like weather buoys in the oceans around the planet, measuring temperature changes and fluctuations, and that was their purpose. But there were two particular historical moments, and they were preceded by like a full degree change in the ocean temperature. And I believe they got it, like on average, a full degree warmer. I believe. Anyway, it was a full degree shift all over the planet on average. But some of them, they was like, we don't know why this buoy is registering that the ocean temperature where it should be, relatively warm has just dropped, or it just went way up. We don't understand why. So there were certain areas where it was more than one, but on average, global, planet-wise, it was 1 degree. Now, water being what we discussed, right? This happened preceding 9/11. Like, it was in the global consciousness that something was going on, that something was happening, and that water being the majority of what we are, that water was picking up on that it was altering the temperature of the oceans. And that leads into a whole nother thing. I mean, when you think about all the fear that is in our media, I mean, it kind of had me going for a little bit, to be quite honest with you. But then, I look at the technology that we have available to us. So, for example, and I'm going to speak to this because, it did freak me out. I think to quite an extent that there's a lot of stories about being unsafe in the woods because they want us to live in major city centers. They want us to be scared of the wilderness. So they have like these videos that people do, and it's actually footage that is recorded over like a 24 or 48 hour period. And then they use the technology that we have to create this like anthropomorphic hodgepodge of a weird looking critter doing something really odd as it moves across the screen. But it's really a mixture of different, like maybe it's sheep, maybe different sheep, or, maybe there's a sheepdog involved. So it's different pieces of every animal that was in that place on that screen at any point, and then they put it together to make it look like a real weird, creepy, freaky looking thing. And in reality, it's just technology. There is no creature like that. And it's all designed to incite fear. It's all designed to incite fear. So if we're like thinking these things and living in this state of anger and rage and fear, that's affecting our body. It's affecting the water around us. The more of us that live in that state, the more that are going to be impacting the entire collective. And what do we see happening? That the global ocean temperatures are rising. Yeah. Now, I'm not like discarding the concept that the poles are shifting, because they are. That there's, like a solar cycle, that we're having a lot more EMs, electromagnetic waves coming from the sun, and that's impacting the Earth's magnetic field. And I don't know enough about that to speak to it, but I know that does impact our minds, and that there's technology that they can use to negatively impact us at a distance, even within our homes, using our technology. So it's like, how far out there are we getting? Like, these are the dots that I'm talking about. Like, what is true and what isn't? What is factual, what isn't? And what do you make true when you connect these dots? And somewhere in all of this, you're making decisions. You're choosing to see it from a negative perspective and giving your power there. And I mean, to be fair, some of those videos are really creepy looking. So for a moment, your brain goes, ah! I think they call that like uncanny valley. Yeah. So like you have that initial reaction, then you're like, oh, yeah, okay, that's right. This isn't actually a thing. Now, I'm not going to say that I know for a fact that, cryptids don't exist. I don't know that. How would I know that? We don't even have proof that they do, for sure, supposedly. But it wouldn't surprise me if, creatures like Bigfoot existed. We just don't understand how they exist or where they exist or how they operate, or we would already have proof. And even if we did, would they want us to know? I mean, it's just like this cyclical thinking. So, I guess in a way, my story of how I relate to the divine comes down to the decisions that we make at this point, and the power that we have to be able to decide what the truth is. And I don't know about you, but I've always experienced that part of me as a very loving, positive, caring experience, even before I had language for what it was. I know that each of us is here for a reason, that we're all unique and beautiful and capable of living the best lives that we could dream of. But we have to choose that. We have to actively create it. If we're choosing to be consistently overwhelmed by anger and fear and sensations of alienation and that we don't matter, then that's what we're going to live. But if we're experiencing those things and we know that they're not actually what we choose, then we're opening a whole different can of worms, if you will. Because that's where it comes into spiritual warfare. That's where you're dealing with the malignant self, one that is actually trying to take out your light within the body of the divine, if you will, using that metaphor. So then, are those emotions yours or are they not? Are those thoughts that just seem overwhelming, are they actually yours or are they not? This is where discernment really came in, because on my journey, I have so much that I was feeling at a young age that my little body and mind was just not equipped yet to cope with. And I have, a few interactions, a few memories where I know that the divine was helping me, because the divine knew that that wasn't fair to me. That whatever happened there was not acceptable. It's kind of like you're too sensitive for this right now. You're not ready for this. You're too young and you're too aware to be processing this. So let me help you with that. That kind of a deal. The one that I'm thinking about in particular was, I was maybe like 3 and my parents were arguing. And my mom in that moment, like my father was not being good to her. He was not being fair. She ended up snapping at me. And I got a dose of what she was feeling for him and herself in that interaction. And then all of her trauma and all of her history. And I didn't understand it. I didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't until later in my life that I understood what it was. But I know that the divine kind of helped me with that. When I hit puberty, and when I got my first menstrual cycle, my dad and my stepbrothers were like, you PMS'd for 2 months straight. It was awful. You could tell from how your feet hit the ground in the morning what kind of day it would be. That kind of a thing. And that was because I was, now looking back on it, I was picking up my abilities were coming online more. So I was picking up on the emotions of everybody, even, the land and any spirits that were attached to the land, any like energy stored within the home that was on repeat. I was processing all of that and I didn't know how, and I didn't have a language for it. I didn't know how to cope with it. Where I am at this point, I recognize that a lot of what I have been battling now with the knowledge that I have, well, it has been something that's been passed down, something that has been keeping tabs on my people, my bloodline, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but it's not there anymore, and it doesn't get to do what it wants to do anymore. And that's part of why the story is here. I may still encounter energies like this, and sometimes I may actually be helping, people in the collective I'm meant to help. I may still be helping with that, but it's all like my people talk with your people, being our spirit team, and there's like a buffering there. It's not just anybody gets to come in, kind of a deal. And even when and should that happen, I'm fully capable of defending myself. Because I'm not defending myself alone. So these statements, these truths, these ownerships, this ability to say this and do so authentically. I mean, even there, like you heard a bit of a moment of like, should I really be saying that? Because it's basically like taunting or inviting, right? The truth is that I wouldn't be drawn to speak of these things if I wasn't able to defend myself, if the divine wasn't capable of defending me, if I did not have a spirit team that was capable of intervening, of equipping me, of connecting us in the collective together to be able to defend one another. There is light at the end of the tunnel, wherever you are on this journey, wherever you are in your process. The more that you connect with people and individuals and energies that you know are not false light, the more change that you're going to experience in the world, the more that you're going to find yourself free from those negative, critical emotions and thoughts that want you to keep yourself small. The more that you will find freedom, the more that you'll be able to see that that thought that you just had was not your thought. Like, in particular, for example, I woke up one morning. Now, I love myself. I do. It's the reason I'm doing all of this. It's the reason I'm fighting, because I know that I'm capable of giving a lot to this world. I know I'm capable of that. And by giving a lot means just loving the living crap out of the people that I get to be blessed to have in my life. That is a lot. Being fully present with them. It's such a gift to be able to give somebody all of your attention, to have someone's complete attention. It's such a gift. So that, if nothing more, that's what I mean. When you do that, you change lives, and more than beyond the one you're interacting with in that moment. So you can find your freedom. You can discover it. You can live that life that you know you're capable of, that you've always longed for. Like a part of you just knows that what you're living is just not right. It just doesn't match with who you know yourself to be and what you're capable of. So don't settle. Don't settle. Because you don't have to. The concept that you have to is an illusion. You're basically giving that malignancy permission then. I don't know about you, but that concept of giving that negativity permission just, oh. But I woke up from a dream in the morning. And the dream, actually, I don't think it was a dream. It was just like that warm, fuzzy kind of feel when you first wake up and like, I'm so comfortable. I love my bed. My pillows are amazing. That kind of warm, floaty feel. I had that experience, and my first thought, which I immediately was like, that is not my God, was a very negative self put down kind of thing. And yeah, I could tell you the actual words, but I'm being led not to. But it was very clear to me, and I started laughing immediately. If ever you find yourself in a scenario like that where you realize that this is something, someone else projecting this into your mind, and they're thinking that you're going to buy it, it becomes humorous. It becomes funny because it's so far from what you know your own thoughts to be about yourself that it's like, if you've been living under a rock, like, what do you, yeah, there's like a bit of a giggle to it. It's just things like that that are out of nowhere. Or, like you're moving through the world and you never like processed people from like a certain perspective. Like I look at people as, unique individuals and they're all moving about their day. And suddenly I'm at like the grocery store and I'm being like, it's kind of like it's like getting slapped with a vision of this individual in a way you would never view them yourself. It's kind of like getting sucker punched in a way. And this person then sees you go, wait, what? And they're now assuming on their end what that facial expression means. And it's triggering their own hurt. These are all things that I personally have encountered with psychic attack. So I knew that I was able to be aware of it, which meant I was able to overcome it. I just needed to figure out how I needed to shift and move the details, the logistics, how I related to what I was capable of, what was true, what wasn't true, in order to be able to own that I really could and did stop that interference. So wherever you are on your journey, keep doing what you're doing. You're already moving in the right direction. Because you desire the answer will come. The divine is having a conversation with you. The divine recognizes that you are, an immune system cell in the divine's body. The divine wants to give you what you need to maintain being this loving being that you see the divine to be. So ask and you shall receive. You don't need to say it out loud or write it down. You can just desire it with your being, and the divine hears you.